conversations that shape our nation. Like I always say, if it matters, then you get to hear it from us right here. Emeka Daniel is my name. Thank you once again for joining us. And of course, I'm not alone. Good morning, Femi.
Yeah, good morning, Daniel.
I hope you had a great night.
Yeah, oh, quite a night. But we are here and we are alive. That's what matters.
Absolutely.
Actually, and every opportunity to be alive, it's a grace. And so we must embrace it and make use of it. Femi Ojo is my name. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, world. And you are welcome to another fresh edition of this program where we look into everything that is important. It is about Nigeria and Nigerians. You know, this is where the conversation happens. And you're welcome. On the program, we look at the headlines, you know, from major dailies. And of course, after that, we then, you know, look into issues, identifying what the challenges are, and of course, profiling solutions to it. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. It's a beautiful day, isn't it?
Absolutely. And just yesterday, we had a conversation with Dr. Moses Paul concerning the crisis in the LP, in the Labour Party.
Right.
And it was like saying that, well, that the Supreme Court actually did not say anything against Nenadi Usman's caretaker committee, that Nenadi Usman is not interested in being the national chairman of the LP, and that Julius Abure, well, is still there. But again, the Supreme Court said the appeal court does not have the jurisdiction to uphold Julius Abure. And I reminded him that, again, the Supreme Court neither recognized nor disregarded Julius Abure. The Supreme Court just said the political parties should respect their own internal democracies. Interestingly, INEC has recognized the LP candidate produced by the Julius Abure faction. Talking about George Mogalu, who polled about 573 votes at the primaries, defeating his closest rival, John Mosu, who polled just 19 votes. So INEC has actually recognized George Mogalu, which looks like a victory for the Abure faction of the LP.
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Very, and it's just like you said, very interesting to know that maybe politicians are almost the same after all, because many persons, especially the obedient young people whose message, P2B's message resonated with, or they saw him as somebody they could work with, or who bears their burden, at the last election, arguably, will be disappointed that the vehicle, by the way, as far as that presidential election is concerned, and P2B, many of them, the young people, don't really care about the LP. It's about the obedience and the message that, the leader represents for them. But then you can't do that as a person. Absolutely. So you need a party. Now, this is what has become that party. Nenadi Usman, Abure, Apampa on one side, on a party that, it is what it is. The APC,
but don't you think it's time for us to start having independent candidates in Nigeria?
Well, the conversation has been on for a while, but then, if you ask me, it's neither here nor there, so that people can prove their mettle. Maybe that could work if we have independence candidacy. That's a constitutional provision, by the way, so amendment must be made. So, right, that being settled is the fact that if there will be independent candidacy, can that person really work? Can an individual pull the weight and make some, moves and get the message going at the national level? I think
someone has done it already.
Well, they didn't win.
Someone has done it already.
They didn't win.
But we know what happened. I mean, we saw the crowd he pulled. I mean, we saw for someone not having, people were saying, no, they were trying to dismiss him. He doesn't have any structure. He doesn't have any structure. Again, what is this structure all about? Now,
what I'm saying is this. I think it could work perfectly at a local level. Local level, where you have one who is very popular and whose antecedent everybody in that community know. To be a councillor, they know him. They know what he can do. He has his people. I think it could work as a councillor. It could work even as a local government chairman. But the moment it goes to as a assembly candidate, it could work. But the moment it goes to the state level, you need a lot of things to do that. You need a lot of things. Now, who is the structure? The people are the structure. Now, I think maybe quite a few persons, but then when it comes to that level, right, you see many things cropping up because anybody that will do an independent candidacy, number one, how heavy is your pocket for you to independently,
It doesn't necessarily have to sponsor it independently. You might have sponsors.
But the thing, yeah, you might have sponsors. And at the end of the day, do you know what sponsors do, right? Especially with the kind of democracy, they see it as investment, right? And the moment you come into place, the moment if that person gets lucky and he is elected, your sponsors are waiting. They don't need to tell you anything. You must settle the boys. And then the question of corruption arises again. The reason why some persons don't want to go through the political parties, they feel the internal corruption in many political parties is even bigger, than what we see outside. Now, the moment you have sponsors, who gives you the billions for you to, mop up the crowd, go through the logistics, assemble everybody, galvanize support. The moment you come in as a state governor, what do you think will happen? Will they tell you bye?
No,
now, you have to settle them, at least with what we know, what we see. And then what happens to that settlement? You give people contracts, and because they know they are entitled, you give them a 4 billion naira contract, so to say. If they give you 1 billion, if I remove 1 billion, what happens to the quality of work that we do? That chief executive officer, that is the state governor, how can they look at his sponsor in the face and say, you have done badly? Write the FCC to come and probe. Then the corruption arises again. And then we are back to where we said maybe independent candidacy could work. So there is a lot of conversation around that. But if we are ripe as a nation, I think we should give it a try. Let everybody test out their popularity as a person.
Absolutely. So we might just see Femi just saying he wants to become local government chairman. Who knows? He might be nursing their big
As they say it in Nigeria, you see me finish. Now, local government chairman.
No, people like to start from, so, okay, you are going straight for presidency. Okay.
All right. Now, apart from that, every opportunity to serve is a good one, actually, Now, because even if it's a local government chairman, if only one person will be in charge of an entire local government, is a big opportunity.
Of course. Now that you're talking about autonomy.
That means you are leading thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And that is why people in elected positions should see it as a real opportunity. Only you, one person, calling the shot.
And I hope you know the local government chairmanship has become more competitive now because of the autonomy, because they'll be getting funds. These are huge sums of money
directly.
They'll be controlling.
To them, at least they'll have more say now, even 100% directly. Now, before we go to the papers, something terrible happened in Ibadan yesterday. And it's one that it has brought out that conversation about unprofessionalism in the way some of the security agencies and some of their personnel handle their affairs. Now, and it's now when that news broke, a report or many reports said, it was a fraudster that was being purchased.
They said it was a Yahoo boy you were chasing.
At the end of the day, and then they had to shoot and then stray bullets. But I saw a video yesterday, and I hope, if it's possible, that we can put it up now before we go to the conversation for the headlines, rather, in which it was, if that video is anything to go by, it was a reckless driver who was being pursued. I think the guy is driving recklessly, right? Like somebody passing, what we call one way. And so the yesterday traffic management guys were on him. And at the end of the day, I think he was being pursued by the police. And so some other persons were trying to block him as well. So they blocked him. The guy was doing all this Formula One stuff. At the end of the day, he got back again, drove recklessly, very reckless per se. And at the end of the day, when the guy, bullied his way in a manner of talking, with his vehicle at the end of the day, tried to get away, then the policeman cocked his gun and shot that driver. That driver is the father of that boy.
Oh, but where did they get the other reports from? That it was actually a student, a WASC student.
Yes,
shot. So
the boy
why
is
the
a student being taken to school.
Oh, so his father was the one.
Reckless, terrible, idiotic father. Because I'm not blaming the victim right now, but what I'm saying is he endangered. There's a saying around here, two people should not be stupid at the same time. The moment you see an act of stupidity, exercise patience, because if it goes ahead with the stupidity and you are trying to say, I will give you the same dose, and then the things get terrible. Now, the father's been...
So the student wasn't killed?
He was killed. The boy was in the car. The boy's father was the one driving recklessly. So a police, in order to apprehend a trigger-happy, unfortunate, untrained, killer policeman, shot at the car, and the bullet hit the boy. And the boy died. Now, it was a terrible, terrible scene, actually, and it has taken, now, such an unfortunate situation. The father got it all wrong. I don't know, even if you are arrested, at the end of the day, you'll be asked to pay fine or your vehicle is confiscated, that boy will still be alive.
And again, on the part of the police, why must they shoot?
Now, no, I'm just trying to set that one straight, that the father was quite reckless. But then, I was asking some people when we were having some conversation yesterday, reckless driving, is the punishment death? How about, okay, let the guy go? At the end of the day, there are many ways to apprehend.
Absolutely.
What happens to the plate number? Because somebody could have gotten the plate number. That's the first thing to get. And
if you go to civilized countries, you don't chase drivers up
to
and
make
down
the
like
matter
that.
worse, that shot was taken at a very crowded place on a road. So the thing could have even done more damage. What kind of training was given to that person? People were passing. Many persons were there. And all of a sudden, what got into your head? And and then the conversation on social space has become NSASPAS too, since yesterday, to say, this is how it used to start. Yeah. And then you will see, I don't know, the Oyo State government has spoken on the matter, mourn the boy, but that was a very needless death.
Very needless death.
Very needless.
Again, it boils down to the fact that majority of our policemen and service personnel are not properly trained. That's just it. You interact with an average policeman, you discover that this person is not properly trained. That's just the problem. If they have the right kind of training, I mean, they should be carrying out some psychological tests on them, some psychiatric tests. Some people even suggest to ensure that these people are psychologically, mentally, and emotionally balanced before they start, handling firearms. Yeah. Otherwise, why would you just cock your gun and shoot? Who gave him such permission?
How?
So it doesn't make any sense.
The training that has always gotten in his life, did they tell you that this is an unarmed guy who just choose to be reckless? Must you kill? Must you shoot? And it has taken them. Not even the unfortunate father now, the boy who knows nothing about this. And so what happens? And then there is orderly trial, and then he's dismissed. And so what? So does that bring back the boy? No, he shouldn't have to dismiss.
He should have to face more grievous consequences.
Even if he's killed, what I'm saying is this, of which he should have his day in court and the justice. What happened to that boy? A promising boy. You know what they say about two wrongs not making a right? Absolutely. That's what happened yesterday. And it's quite unfortunate, that we are still having this conversation in 2025. Somebody behaving, a trigger-happy policeman behaving like a bushman who is running after bushmen.
It doesn't make any sense.
Who can just shoot anyhow.
You know what? Someone
at a crowded place.
Yeah, someone once said that the IQ of an average Nigerian policeman, I'm quoting someone, I said it's less than 20. It's quite unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. It was a gory video. But in the course of the program, you get to see that video. Quite gory, I must say. We'll go on this quick break right now. When we return, we'll continue with the program is Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Stay with us.
Oh, thank you for staying with us. We go straight to the front pages of the newspapers this morning. We start from the front page of the Punch newspaper. May 29, Tinubu to review ministers' scorecards. May 29, Tinubu to review ministers' scorecards. With a rider, presidency may get ministers' new assessment report this week. Low-performing ministers under fire. Low-performing ministers under pressure. Talking about ministers now and the presidency to review the scorecard towards May 29, 2025. Away from that, moving on to other stories. Still on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. Dollar outflow for fuel imports surges 119%. Dollar outflow for fuel imports surges So dollar outflow has increased for fuel imports. Again, it still boils down to the fact that our refineries are not producing enough fuel. So we are still spending so much money on foreign exchange now for the importation of fuel. When we have, where we have crude oil and we should be refining all the fuel
local refineries.
Quite unfortunate. Away from that, federal panel submits key report on census funding. Federal panel submits key report on census funding. You find a story on page 18 of the Punch newspaper this morning. States to draft new framework for LG autonomy. States to draft new framework for local government autonomy. You find a story on page 2. Again, if local governments are, should be autonomous, is it the states that will determine the framework? I was thinking it's coming from the federal government. Them funding the state, the local government directly, because autonomy means they should be independent of the state's government. But now, if the states are the ones drafting the framework, which means there might be some terms and conditions, again, still boils down to the fact that majority of the states do not want to lose grip on the local government. They still want to have that control on the local government. Well, let's see how that works. So again, it is the courts that will determine. At the end of the day, from that, still on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. Traditional Council protest as Oyo Assembly backtracks. Traditional Council protest as Oyo Assembly backtracks. You find that story on page 43. Moving on to other stories. FG to auction 753 duplexes seized from Emefiele. Federal government to auction 753 duplexes seized from Emefiele. Talking about the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele. When that story broke, when that news broke about 753 duplexes in Abuja, it caused a lot of uproar. A lot of people, resources, be channeled into doing, executing such a project. Where did the funds come from? 753 duplexes. Quite unfortunate, of course, it has been seized and now they're talking about auctioning it. Femi, would you be interested in getting one of the duplexes? And again, the question actually is, how do they determine who gets what? At the end of the day, is it not going back to the hands of, some politicians?
Well, officially,
leaders?
it's supposed to be through an auction.
That's what I'm saying.
A random auction.
Auction can be rigged.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. Quite interesting. Away from that, moving to the bottom strip of the Punch newspaper this morning. Immigration mobilizes joint task force against terror threats. Immigration mobilizes joint task force against terror threats. You find a story on page 20. Away from that, missing Lagos bankers' corpse found in morgue. Missing Lagos bankers' corpse found in morgue. You find a story on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. And finally, from the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning, OPS faults MPC over 27.5% interest rates. OPS faults MPC over 27.5% interest rate. I think just yesterday that story broke that the CBN is maintaining 27.5 interest rate. We find a story on page 29 of the Punch newspaper. And that'll be all from the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning.
We move to This Day, newspaper This Day, and boldly reading, Putin Oti Mba on the sport. Umai claims all Southeast governors are supporting Tinubu for 2027. Putin Oti Mba on the sport. Umai claims all Southeast governors are supporting Tinubu for 2027. And with riders, PDP caucus in region formally represent Ude Okoye for National Secretary, threatens to pull out if rejected. And Udenwa insists forces behind Anyan will not bigger than them. And Deputy National Chair promises party will discuss their resolution submitted to NEC. And our party still waxing strong. Senators declare, all right. It is what it is, as they say. Minister Umai saying the Southeast governors are supporting Tinubu. So it remains, can he speak for them?
Should he be speaking for them? That's a question.
Does he have that capacity to speak for them? Does that mean silence means consent?
Is he trying to preempt them?
If Oti and Mba, who will be doing that because they belong to different parties. Actually, now many things. Oti is a Labour Party governor. Mr. Mba is a PDP governor. And so now that Mr. Umai, former governor of Ebonyi State, is saying all of them are supporting Mr.
Alex Oti has already supported Mr. President openly. He has already declared his support for him. So we are not surprised.
All right. Down below that, you have the picture of the briefing on decisions of the 300th MPC meeting. Moving on, in major win for anti-graft war, EFCC transfers 753 houses assist from Emefiele to housing ministry. Interesting. I remember when this news broke, they just said a public officer who worked under President President Buhari, that was the way it was framed. Even in the EFCC, they didn't mention Emefiele, but people,
his name later surfaced.
We just put one and two together to say, who could that be?
753 duplexes.
That's somebody owning a community, a singular person. But that's a community. 753 duplexes. That's a community there. Interesting. People have mind.
The day that story broke, I remember, calls on radio. I was hosting a radio show. People were just furious. People were furious.
To say, what somebody is in charge of 753 duplexes and somebody is managing under the bridge. Somebody cannot afford a one room. As they say, life no balance. Now, Idris, Tinubu's reforms initially triggered hardship, now yielding measurable outcomes. There is nothing wrong here, especially from politicians. Technically defeated, technically winning. This one is measurable outcomes. All right. And I think the people that should do that measurement should be Nigerians, not people in power.
Yeah.
Nigerians should be able to say, this is where I was 2 years ago. This is where I am right now. And if actually shows progress, then if you are telling me that my life has improved, maybe something is wrong.
You shouldn't be the one telling me.
I should know. It should reflect.
Absolutely.
And it's not just my words. My neighbor should know. Your neighbor should know. Everybody in the community should be aware that, yes, things have improved. And, that is when it's measurable. All right. But the minister is saying, yes, things were hard. All right. Even at that time, they didn't agree that things were hard. Some of their handlers, they kept gaslighting and to say, no, it's opposition. And all of these things, now they are saying, okay, things were hard, but things are getting better. And I think it should be seen now, not just measurable. Away from that, says, now, still on the same story, says renewed hope agenda laying groundwork for nation's economic rebirth. Now, by 29th, the groundwork that the renewed hope is laying will have been 2 years. Now, if you use 2 years on a foundation, I wonder the kind of building. The building better be the ones that we have never seen.
No, that's why they will now tell you that they need more time. That's why they need a second term in office.
All right. I know. And I think the level of the foundation they said they are laying, people should be able to see. So to decide, either they want you to continue with the building or someone else will have to continue the building or another foundation will need to be, laid already. And Nigeria's economic problems, not president's creation. Is there something that Musa will not see at the gate, as they say now? Nigeria's economic problems, not president's creation. Umoeno, I think, is the governor of Akwa Ibom State. Now is speaking on behalf of the president. Interesting days ahead. And then that will be all from this day.
Okay, and from this day newspaper, we move to the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. MPC seeks fiscal support on Naira stability, retains interest rate at 27.5%. Monetary Policy Committee seeks fiscal support on Naira stability, retains interest rates at 25%. And we can see just below that, we have the MPR That's the monetary policy rate at 27.50%. They are retaining it for the second time this year at 27.50%. And of course, we have the CRR, that's the cash reserve ratio, 50% for commercial banks and 16% for merchant banks. Talking about the cash reserve ratio. You know, yesterday we saw a report that about 90.5% of cash in circulation in Nigeria is not within the banks.
Within the bank.
So quite
outside the bank.
So now we have the CRR at 50% for commercial banks and of course 16% for merchant banks. Let's see if they can mop up more of this cash circulating outside the banking system in Nigeria. And also we have inflation rates, of course, at 23.71%. Of course, previously it was 24.23. Now we have 23.71. Then we have the liquidity ratio, the LR, at 30%. Then, of course, we have the asymmetric corridor, the AC, at plus 500 / minus 100 basis points. Right there, talking about the breakdown of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the 300th meeting they had recently. Right there, you have the picture of the, I think that should be the CBN. Is that the CBN governor? Is that Olayemi Cardoso? That's his picture right there.
It is.
Away from that, moving to the top strip of the Guardian newspaper. ICPC busts bank accounts of 6-week bachelor's degree racket. ICPC bursts bank accounts of 6-week bachelor's degree racket. You find the story on page 3. That'll be very interesting. What kind of 6-week bachelor's degree? I have no idea. So you might want to read out details of that story in page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
As an executive bachelor there.
Should there be anything like that? You know, we know of executive master's degrees. I mean, but bachelor's, that's the foundation. How on earth can you, well, there is nothing new under the sun. Away from that, on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Budget uncovers 11,122 prospects worth 6.93 trillion naira inserted into 2025 budget. Budget uncovers 11,122 projects worth 6.93 trillion naira inserted into 2025 budget. You find that story on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. I saw that report yesterday where budget actually said the National Assembly inserted 11,122 projects into the 2025 budget. And that's shooting it up by 6.93 trillion naira. We've not heard anything from them. Of course, there'll be, allegations and counter-allegations, but this is quite unfortunate. We've been talking about budget padding in Nigeria. It never ends. It keeps popping up over and over again. And that's what this is all about. Away from that, still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. We're sacrificing quality for quantity with universities' proliferation, says Gbajabiamila. We are sacrificing quality for quantity with universities' proliferation, says Gbajabiamila. That's Chief of Staff of the Federation, Femi Gbajabiamila. You'll find a story on
Chief
page
of Staff
7.
to the President.
Chief of Staff to the President of the nation, of course. Again, talking about quality for quantity. Well, I've always been of that opinion that it doesn't really matter how many universities we have in Nigeria. I don't care if we have only 10, but let them be of high quality. But when you're having, everyday universities are popping up. The question is, what quality are they churning out? What quality of graduates are Nigerian universities churning out? Sometimes you look at the curriculum and you shake your head. Sometimes it's nothing to write home about. There's a disjoint between, what's obtainable in the industrial world, in the society, and the curriculum, what students are being taught in school. Most times when students come out of the universities, you have to train them. Okay, they need to go for some form of training before they can fit into the workspace. And that's what we're talking about here. I think we should focus more on the quality and not on the quantity of tertiary institutions we have in Nigeria. Away from that, moving on to other stories. Still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Lagos State government clarifies water sachet, PET bottles not included in single-use plastic ban. Lagos State government clarifies water sachets, PET bottles not included in single-use plastics ban. You find a story on page 7. Of course, Lagos State has banned the use of single-use plastics. This is not the first time. Some time ago, that report came up. The Lagos State government actually banned the use of styrofoam. That has been causing a menace in Lagos. You see the drainages clogged with so much styrofoam products. It has been banned already, and they're still upholding that. But they're saying water sachet is not part of it. But that one too is a problem. It actually can be recycled. Talking about they call it pure water popularly here in Nigeria. You see them in drainages and all that, and these are materials that can actually be recycled if they can actually mop them up. Away from that, it's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Gateway 2025, over 10 million are direct clothing sold in 10 days, says Olokpade. Gateway 2025, over 10 million are direct clothing sold in 10 days, says Olokpade. You find a story on page 7. ECOWAS at 50. Gowon restates Nigeria's foreign policy thrust as Akpabio urges unity, stability. ECOWAS at 50. Gowon restates Nigeria's foreign policy thrust as Akpabio urges unity, stability. You'll find a story on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. PDP turmoil escalates with Southeast factions at odds over secretaryship. PDP turmoil escalates with Southeast factions at odds over secretaryship. Of course, we talked about that previously on the program, where the PDP, the Southeast faction of the PDP are saying that if you do not recognize their candidate as the national secretary, that they might pull out of the party. And that conversation has been going on, and they're still sticking to their candidate for the national secretary position. Away from that, Umahi affirms Southeast governor's support for Tinubu's second-term bid. Umahi affirms Southeast governor's support for Tinubu's second-term bid. That's talking about the Minister of Works, Engineer Dave Umahi, saying Southeast governors are actually supporting the president for his second-term bid. You find a story on page 29. And below that, federal government to dispose 753 housing units linked to Emefiele. Federal government to dispose 753 housing units linked to Emefiele. You find that story on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. And that'll be all from the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Right, and very interesting for me that stands out, the story is the 10 million direct clothing.
So
now, the thing is sometimes in Nigeria, why I love it actually, because Abeokuta, just like Oshogbo, is a place of art and culture and adire as well. Now, is when we churn out these figures, let it be the ones that is very viable. And when you say 10 million adire, how? Is it 10 million naira worth of adire?
Or 10 million yards of adire.
10 million yards or bundles or, you know, yeah, that's you succinctly capture what I'm trying to say. 10 million how? What measure?
Just 10 million.
Just 10 million how? Is it, you know, the bundles that you sold, or, you know, I think it should be captured well. Maybe it's the paper or the person that brought it out. But these are some of the offsite, offshoot gains of hosting a particular competition, national sports festival. You know, there might be sport village for the athletes, but then there are many persons that will come in. The hotels in that place will be making a very good business. You know, many persons on the side, food sellers, transporters, many of them, it helps the ecosystem as well. But then another thing that has always been a bane of development in Nigeria, especially when competitions are hosted, is what becomes of that venue after the competition is over. You need to see possibly the next 6 months, and you know, the maintenance. What is you know, the way forward? Who will be in charge how to know that a competition will not finish in May, and by the time you come in December, the place will be
for it.
Yeah.
So some
millions
of
millions
those competitions are quite iconic. Some events are quite iconic. Look at Festac, for instance.
Yeah.
At least when you look at Festac, it will always remind you of Festac 77.
Right. And of course, it should be something that should be used continually. I understand some of the stadium are existing stadiums that have been given a facelift, but then Ogun is doing well. And I hope Team Osun will return good as well.
Yeah, I understand they've been, picking up some gold medals.
Yeah. Was he in, particular
lifting,
right?
weightlifting? I understand it.
Yeah, but then the host state will always, be expected to put up a good show. But interestingly, I learned Delta is leading the pack, and you can always give it to Delta.
They've always been like, if you look at those competitions,
you don't have to gloat.
No, it's not because I'm from Delta. Anyway.
I didn't say that. I didn't say you don't have to gloat. But then I think that's what we can. This is the much that we can take at this time. We'll go on a quick break. When we return, the conversation begins. Stay with us.